What is the role of an observer delegate at a UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, or COP, event?
So it's a lot of fun getting to go to a COP event as an observer, but it's important to understand how complicated the events are. There are official country delegates. Those are the people that the federal government of that country is sent to negotiate. There's also guests of the government that have a similar badge that, people from provinces, et cetera, in Canada, maybe some companies that have come along with the government. And then on top of that, there's all of the observers, like the folks that come from universities like UBC. And so as an observer, you can go in and watch some of the negotiations. Some of it's closed and people aren't allowed to attend. And so otherwise, you can attend some of the negotiations, but you can also attend all of the other events. And that's the crazy thing about COPs. They are official United Nations negotiating events. They are diplomatic events for countries to come together and talk about climate change. But there's this sort of climate change trade show that goes on around the outside of it, with official United Nations side events that anybody can attend, but then individual countries, companies, international organizations, etc., have their own, basically, booths where they have their own sets of events. And so as an observer, you can go to all of that and you can attend some of the actual negotiations. So you get a sense of what's going on at the conference, but it's actually pretty hard to follow the negotiations themselves because it's in very diplomatic and technical language, and you're only allowed into some of it.
What preparation would you recommend prior to going to COP events?
I would recommend really, so as Simon mentioned, there's a lot of meetings that happen that lead to the COP, to the COP28 or the actual COP. So to follow these conversations beforehand, because a lot of the targets have already been set and a lot of the documents that will be negotiated at COP have been prepared. So to follow these conversations months in advance, as well as looking up on what were the targets that were set in the previous COPs, would really be helpful in following the negotiations and conversations that are happening during the actual COP and kind of not feeling too lost.
What did you gain from being a COP observer?
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, going there as a UBC observer, I found that to be more fun than going for the FAO or an NGO, because we are here. This is what we do, scientists. So I love that. What did I gain? I got to learn a lot about the negotiations, how complicated they are, and the diversity of people. Some of the best moments I had was outside the hall with the demonstrators. As the senior lady with all placards, deal with climate change or you are selling off our kids, and all those were part of the chemistry of the thing, which was beautiful, right? And then I also was looking for what new things. For example, how do we measure emissions? I was looking for that. And Al Gore and some tech people came up with some nice, I think, they're working on some technology that was nice. Then there was hydrogen. Hydrogen as energy source, that was also big at the COPs. That's something new to me at least, right? So that was also cool to see. And so I was looking for those kind of things, nuggets here and there. One beautiful thing that also happened is the Canadian delegation, the Minister of Environment, arranged, I think every other day, to give us a briefing about the negotiation and Canada's role, or what Canada is doing, and took questions from us and comments to help them the next day. So I thought that was also beautiful to see that.
What are reasonable goals for COP observers?
I'd say have smaller, more achievable goals, because there's so much happening in that space. Kind of just let that feed into the goals. For example, I went just out of curiosity plane to know what happens in this, which is often seen from outside as a black box. So just to learn more about how these decisions are made, both on a global scale as well as more micro level.
Do you have any final thoughts for future COP delegates from UBC?
COP events are incredible and chaotic experiences, and one of the things I think is really valuable is to figure out where your home base is going to be when you're actually at the meeting. And so one thing that's really helpful is the Canadian government has been having its own pavilion at recent COPs. And so I found it really helpful. A lot of other Canadian delegates would be there, including people from UBC, to whenever I was between events, go back to that pavilion to reconnect with a few people, sit down for a few minutes, etc. Because the meetings are huge and sprawling and you can sort of get lost in it. And it's nice to know where you're going to go at the end. The other thing is to make sure you know what you're going to do at the beginning of each day. The days will evolve as they go. And a great way to start is with the Canadian briefings, if they're holding one, or to get yourself on the Ringo email list. The Ringo is the Association of Research and Independent NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and they hold a briefing every morning at every COP updating what has been happening. So it's a great chance to get an update on what's happening in the negotiations, but also to meet other students often and university delegates from other parts of the world.
I'd say finally, an advice to delegates, especially student delegates, would be to try and coordinate with other delegates going from UBC, but also we met a lot of delegates coming from Simon Fraser University and other universities in Canada, and that can be your community there because it's so vast that it can be isolating. And so to really try and find your community, and it'll also be fun to coordinate and do a project or have a booth. During COP27 we saw that a lot of the US universities were able to get a booth and have information sessions or run advocacy sessions. So really just having some better coordination would help logistically also, and as well as keeping track of the many events that are happening at COP. And since you can't be at all places at once, it's nice to debrief at the end of the day as well to share what each of us have learned.
For the next UBC observers to COP, one of the things I would advise them to look out for are new initiatives started by groups or countries that could actually lead to something big and see what progress. I'll give an example just to make it concrete. France, just a few weeks ago, came up with a ban on travel in France where there are train alternatives where it doesn't take you more than 2.5 hours to get. So this is, and I love this thing. I love it so much I did a little note to Nature actually about it. And if accepted it is going to come out. It's this 200-word thing. I just dropped something. The reason I like this is most of our initiatives currently are based on voluntary people who care, right? Someone will ride his bicycle, right? And some of us don't eat that to reduce our carbon footprint, whilst many don't care, right? So, but this is a legislation, this is a rule that includes everybody. And I think to deal with climate change, you will have to do that. You cannot just depend on those who want to do it by themselves because they think it's the right thing to do. So I love this. And following to see how this tracks, whether we have similar countries doing similar things would be quite cool, I think.